Ava stepped into the boutique with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to announce herself. The store was drenched in glass and gold, racks of designer dresses hanging like museum pieces, soft music humming in the background, and the lingering scent of expensive perfume in the air. She wore a simple black jumpsuit and white sneakers. Her curls were pulled into a loose bun, and a worn leather tote hung over her shoulder. She didn't look like the usual clientele, and the sales associate behind the counter noticed immediately. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her eyes scanning Ava from head to toe like a barcode. There was no warmth in her tone, just confusion, maybe annoyance. "I'm just looking," Ava replied, offering a polite smile. The woman didn't respond. Instead, she walked around the counter and began straightening already perfect items on a nearby rack, eyes never fully leaving Ava as she browsed. Ava's fingers paused on a floor-length silk gown, rich emerald green with a plunging neckline and hand-beaded sleeves. It was stunning. The kind of dress meant for red carpets and moments that changed your life. She held the hanger gently, admiring the craftsmanship. "Oh," the associate said suddenly, as if catching herself from laughing. "That one's quite expensive." Ava looked at her. "I figured. It's custom Valentino. Just under 11,000. The tone said it all. "Put it back." Behind them, another staff member emerged from the back room, whispering loud enough for both to hear, "People love playing dress-up lately." They chuckled. Ava didn't flinch. She carefully returned the gown to the rack, nodded once, and headed for the door without another word. As the bell above the door jingled behind her, one of them called after her, playfully, but with venom hiding behind a smile, "Come back when you're ready for the real stuff." Ava didn't turn around. She didn't have to. Because in just a few days, her face would be 20 feet tall, looking down at that very same storefront from a billboard that said, loud and clear, "Luxury Redefined." 2 days after the boutique incident, Ava was back in her tiny studio apartment, curled up on the floor with mood boards spread out around her like puzzle pieces. Swatches of fabric, sketchbooks filled with loose ink drawings, and a half-drunk cup of chamomile tea sat dangerously close to her laptop. The overhead fan buzzed softly above her. It always sounded like it was just about to give out. She was sketching a concept for a new collection, soft tailoring and bold silhouettes, shapes meant for power and softness to coexist, when her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number. Almost let it go to voicemail. "Hello," she answered, cautiously. A pause. Then a bright, polished voice cut through. "Hi, is this Ava Brooks? This is Chelsea Lang from the Everline campaign team. We saw your silhouettes and reclamation capsule at last week's Indie Fashion Assembly. And we were blown away." Ava sat upright. You saw it?" "Not only saw it, we showed it to Everline herself. She loved the message, the colors, the balance between structure and fluidity. She said, and I quote, 'That girl designs like she remembers where she came from.'" Ava blinked. For a moment, everything in the room, the fan, the noise from outside, even the pressure of her own doubt, fell quiet. Chelsea continued. "We're producing a nationwide campaign for Everline's return to high fashion. It's rooted in reclaiming power, identity, legacy, and we want you. Not just your work. You. We want you to design 3 custom pieces and be the face of the campaign." Ava swallowed hard. "You want me on the billboard?" "Yes. Your designs, your name, your face. Center stage. If you're in." She didn't say yes immediately. She stood up, barefoot, heart pounding, and looked out her window, down at the corner of 6th and Marlowe, where a giant blank billboard loomed above the city, waiting to be painted with someone's story. Hers. "I'm in," she said softly. And in that moment, the sting from the boutique, the smirks, the assumptions, the tiny cuts of condescension, began to fade. Not because she'd forgotten, but because she was about to eclipse them. The Everline team didn't waste time. Within 48 hours of Ava's yes, she was flown out to a downtown loft-turned-studio, the kind reserved for high-fashion shoots and magazine covers. It smelled of eucalyptus, steam, and ambition. Natural light poured through warehouse windows, and racks of luxurious fabrics lined the brick walls. Ava arrived early. Too early. She stood outside the studio doors for several minutes just breathing, in through the nose, out through the fear. Inside, everything felt surreal, professional stylists pinning fabrics, photographers adjusting lights, interns rushing with clipboards and iced oat lattes. But then someone pointed to her and said, "That's her." And the room shifted. Chelsea, sleek, confident, and always smiling with intent, greeted her with a warm hug. "This is your space now," she said. "You don't need to fit in. We're shaping around you." Ava's sketches, once scattered across her floor, now lined a wall-sized mood board, elevated and framed. The stylist showed her samples inspired by her designs: a structured blazer with waterfall shoulders, a silk jumpsuit with reclaimed denim insets, and a two-piece suit in deep earth tones meant to reclaim softness as strength. But it wasn't just about the clothes. The photographer, a black woman named Yara with fire in her eyes, sat Ava down before the first shot. "You are not here to pose. You're here to show them what legacy looks like. You've already lived the story. Now let them see it." Ava exhaled, then stepped into the frame. Click. A glance over the shoulder. Click. A small smile, the kind that says, "I remember everything you said about me." Click. Head high. Chin steady. Truth in her bones. By the end of the shoot, the team was buzzing. One of the assistants whispered, "That billboard's gonna stop traffic." But Ava wasn't thinking about traffic. She was thinking about that dress. That boutique. That laugh. And how, in just a few days, the very people who tried to shrink her would have to look up, just to see her face. The billboard went up on a Thursday morning. Ava didn't tell anyone she was coming to see it. She didn't bring friends. No cameras. Just her, in the same black jumpsuit and sneakers she'd worn that day at the boutique, a silent nod to who she was, and who she still chose to be. She walked the familiar block slowly. The same sidewalks, same store windows, same boutique glinting with soft light behind gold-plated handles. But the energy felt different now, like the air knew something. Then she turned the corner onto Marlowe. And there it was. 20 feet tall. Draped in natural light and power. Her face, calm, radiant, unbothered, staring out from the billboard above the very store that had once dismissed her. One hand tucked in the pocket of a blazer she had designed, the other resting on her hip. Behind her, bold white letters spelled the campaign title. Luxury, Reclaimed. Ava Brooks Foreverline. People on the street paused. Looked up. Whispers, phones raised. But Ava didn't look at them. Her eyes were on the storefront. She walked past it, slow and steady. Inside, through the glass, she caught sight of the same associate from before. The one who had smirked at her, who'd told her the price of the green dress like a warning. The woman stood frozen behind the register, staring out the window at the billboard. Ava didn't wave. Didn't gloat. She just offered the smallest, knowing nod, a quiet punctuation mark. This wasn't revenge. It was visibility. It was reclamation. It was proof. She kept walking, her reflection trailing behind her in each polished boutique window, no longer edited or erased. For the first time on that street, no one asked if she belonged. They already knew. The billboard wasn't the peak, it was just the door. After the Everline campaign launched, Ava's inbox flooded. Fashion editors requested interviews. Stylists for major award shows asked for exclusive pulls. An established luxury house even offered to buy her capsule collection outright and let her consult under their brand. She declined. Because Ava had spent years watching the industry take from people who look like her. Borrowing aesthetics, language, even pain, packaging it into trends with no trace of origin. She didn't want a seat at someone else's table. She was building her own. Within weeks, she launched Studio Brooks, her independent design house focused on storytelling through fashion, each piece rooted in heritage, sustainability, and unapologetic identity. The first drop sold out in hours. Her clients ranged from Grammy nominees to school teachers saving up for a jacket that felt like armor in the world. But Ava didn't just design clothes. She opened a mentorship program for young designers from underrepresented communities, offering studio time, funding, and connections the industry guarded like secrets. Her showroom became a safe space where ideas could be loud, bodies could be real, and the future of fashion wasn't dictated by Paris or Milan, but by purpose. During one of her first live panels, a moderator asked, "What's been the biggest shift since the campaign?" Ava paused. Smiled. "I used to walk into rooms hoping to be seen," she said. "Now I walk in knowing I belong, and making sure the door doesn't close behind me." The audience erupted. But she didn't flinch or blush. She wasn't surprised. She had always been that woman. Now the world had finally caught up. 6 months after the Everline billboard, Ava stood on a rooftop in Paris, overlooking the Seine, the Eiffel Tower behind her, dusk painting the city in gold. She wasn't there as a tourist. She was closing Paris Fashion Week. It had never happened before, a first-time Black American designer, self-funded, invited to headline the final show of the season. Editors scoffed at first. Too soon, they whispered. Too niche. But they hadn't seen the work. The show wasn't in a gilded palace or a chandelier-filled hall. It was in a repurposed textile warehouse in Montreuil, once used to mass-produce fast fashion. Now, under Ava's direction, it had been transformed into a living gallery of reclamation. Models of all shades, genders, and sizes walked the runway barefoot, wearing garments made from recycled heritage fabrics, reworked Ankara, quilted denim, salvaged silk. The collection was called Lineage. Each piece was stitched with a hidden line of words, fragments of poetry, protest, family history. Not visible to the eye, but carried by the body. No one clapped during the final walk. They stood in silence. Moved. Changed. After the show, Ava received messages from around the world, a young girl in Lagos who had started sewing again, a fashion school in Tokyo that redesigned its curriculum around cultural ethics, a museum in London requesting to exhibit her designs not as product, but as art. The boutique that once mocked her? They reposted a photo of her show with the caption, "We love Ava Brooks." She laughed. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. The industry was shifting, not because it chose to, but because it had to. She had made herself impossible to ignore. Ava returned to her hotel that night and sat alone on the balcony, Paris glittering below. She thought about that first sketch. That green dress. That moment of small humiliation. And how none of it had broken her. It had made her. She looked at her hands, the same hands they had underestimated. Now creating futures. One stitch at a time. It had been a year. A year since the smirks, the green dress, the invisible dismissal. A year since Ava walked out of that boutique and into her power. Now, she was back. Not for revenge. Not even for closure. But because her team had chosen this city to open the first flagship store for Studio Brooks. It wasn't some high-rise or cold designer cube. It was a restored 2-story brownstone just a block away from that very boutique, warm brick, soft lighting, and a glass storefront that welcomed sunlight and stories. On opening day, a line wrapped around the block. Friends. Strangers. Fashion students. Older women who'd never seen themselves in store windows before. Kids dragging their parents by the hand. Everyone waiting not just for clothes, but for permission to take up space. Inside, Ava stood beneath a massive art installation made of stitched letters, real handwritten notes from women who had felt underestimated, overlooked, dismissed. It hung from the ceiling like a fabric cloud, floating over racks of design. She wasn't alone. In the crowd, she noticed a familiar face, the boutique sales associate. Same perfect posture, same sharp blazer, but now with softer eyes. She wasn't laughing. She was watching. Ava offered a small smile, not spiteful, not smug. Just real. The woman gave a tiny nod, then turned and left. No words were needed. Later that night, Ava stood alone in the front window. The streetlights reflected softly on the glass. Across the road, the old boutique sat quiet, still curated, still exclusive. But empty. And in her own window, not a mannequin, but a portrait. A photograph from the Everline shoot. Ava, in her blazer, hand on hip, eyes calm and certain. Underneath, in gold serif letters. You belong here. Not a slogan. A truth. Ava placed her hand on the glass, just for a moment. And for the first time in a long time, the girl who once walked away feeling small, smiled like a woman who had finally come home.